So I really wanted to do a follow-up video on that amazing game, Toulouse getting their 6th star, their 6th Champions Cup, and Leinster missing out for the 3rd time in a row. Absolute heartbreak. There's many ways I could have gone here. I was definitely thinking about personnel and about areas that they're struggling. Maybe Ross Byrne at 10 not quite being that championship winning 10. Sexton obviously the guy they're trying to replace. Is it Harry Byrne? Is it young Prendergast? Are the guys coming in next season, R.G. Snyman and Geordie Barrett, are they the key that unlocks this extra star on the jersey for Leinster? That is a good video. That's something maybe I'll talk about in the future. But actually, rather than the big picture, I thought I wanted to focus in the thing I just couldn't get out of my mind, and that was the play that I think lost Leinster the Champions Cup. Now, of course, that's a bit of a facetious thing to say because there's so many different areas where the game could have been won or lost if they'd taken more shots of goal, hit some drop kicks, done some different tactics, whatever it is. But this is the one I just couldn't get out of my head because I think it actually epitomises a bigger picture thing as well. But I'm going to go into some micro detail here, looking at one play and all the things that happened. I've done this before and there was some good feedback, so I'm going to do it again. I really enjoy it. Loads of screenshots coming up. If you like this sort of thing, do subscribe, do like. This is going to be fun. Well, maybe not for a Leinster fan, if you can grin and bear it. Let's go through this because I think this is where they lost that Champions Cup final in extra time. So let's recap ourselves with the situation. The game has just gone into extra time. The score is still 50-0 and Leinster have literally just lost James Lowe to his yellow card. He had to flick up his hand. It's kind of a reaction, but it was very costly. And it was before Richie Arnold's red card as well. So Leinster are defending with a man down. So this is this crucial period where Toulouse knew they could win the game. So let's have a look at the setup for that try to Lebel that ultimately I think won the game and why it was such an important play and maybe even more important than we first thought. The setup for Toulouse is a standard 3-man forward pod with the big lock Meafu right in the middle there, and it was fairly fortuitous for them because he got to come back onto the pitch after a rest because he's replacing an HIA and he got to make some more big runs. I said this in the match report, so he's quite fresh and it might not actually be his most destructive carry. Now, this whole Toulouse attack, the point is, it's okay. It's not their best attack, but Leinster make an absolute meal of it. They completely muck it up, which is why I'm saying they lost the final here, even though I know Toulouse are worthy winners. Defended amazingly, some amazing stuff there. Turnovers, Dupont and all that, but I still think Leinster will go away and they will think in their review, why on earth did we do this? Anyway, Meafu carries not his biggest carry. Andrew Porter decides the guy's a monster. He's already handed people off and offloaded. I'm just going to take him to ground, which I think is a wise decision. So he goes low and executes a really good chop tackle. Even so, the momentum of the big man goes over the gain line, so it's a decent carry but a decent tackle as well. The tackler Porter is assisted by Kelleher, and we see Michael Alalatoa. He's nearly drawn into the ruck, but actually he realises he can't affect it and he gets into the defensive line. So that actually is a good thing for Leinster. The benefit of that tight pod of 3 forwards means that Rumar and Nettie, they're right there clearing out even before Meafu is fully on the ground. So good clear out. You can see Josh van der Fleer, as he should, hovering around that ruck, eyes on it to try and sniff a jackal, but there's no chance, so he doesn't commit either. So Antoine Dupont arrives, leaping over a player, nice and quick on the scene, but the defence is ready. Doris is at one side of the ruck, and you can see him telling Joe McCarthy to get to the other side as the second pillar. So in essence, I think the honours are even here. We've got 3 in the ruck for Toulouse, Dupont at the base, that makes 4, and then 2 in the ruck and 2 pillars for Leinster, that makes 4. So no one is committed to counter-rucking, there's no overcommitment, and they're fanning out. So this is a pretty good situation for Leinster to be in, ready to defend that next phase. In fact, when the picture zooms out, we can see that Leinster may have dodged a bullet as well. On the blind side, Kinghorn made a run, he collided with Frawley. Frawley is staying down, and that gives Toulouse maybe the extra man on that blind side. Maybe if Dupont had checked and broke blind instead, he could have sucked in Doris, and then it actually would have been a 3-on-2 as Kinghorn was getting back up. So I did read in some reports they were saying Leinster were actually down to 13 men because Frawley's on the ground. But I think it really would have only made a material difference if they had broken blind. And let's say, for argument's sake, James Lowe was on the pitch and they were up to 15 players. Well, maybe he would have actually stayed on the left to cover for the down Frawley, or he would have covered in behind, I don't know. But I don't think Frawley being down or even Lowe being off the pitch was a big factor in this try. So now the stage is set, attack versus defence. The defence are ready, the attack is ready, and we see a classic shape we see all the time in modern rugby. Fly half Roman Intermac is floating in behind the pod of three forwards, with the middle forward Marchand receiving the ball from Dupont. Now you're supposed to have options inside and outside, so you can have runners inside and outside, quick clear outs as we saw in the last phase. Now in reality the pod is actually quite deep. They've got carrying options inside and outside, but they're not really threatening runs. Marchand isn't threatening carrying himself, so that defensive line stays intact and just comes up nice and smoothly. No one being checked, no one being committed in any way by that pod. Now let's have a look at the all-important numbers. Let's ignore Dupont and the ruck guard McCarthy, and then we have 6 defenders in the line and 7 attackers facing them. Lebel is out hugging the touchline, really wide, so we're kind of discounting him for now. So it's kind of 7 attackers versus 6 defenders, which is a situation that defenders will face all the time, so that's not particularly bad. We see Keenan hanging back to cover Lebel and maybe the crossfield kick as well. So then Julian Marchand passes. Marchand takes a few strides forward, but he's actually passing a good few metres away from the defensive line, so the Leinster players, they know they're not tackling anyone in that 3, and they are free to do as they wish in that defensive line. In the line, let's have a look at the 6 defenders. We have Josh van der Fleer, who's fairly fresh, coming on just after half-time. We've got Ala Alatoa, fairly fresh as well. Baird, who's played the whole match. Conan is fresh, however. And then outside, we have the 2 backs, Henshaw and Lama. And Lama is full of running. He's been playing really well up until this point in defence, which makes it even more painful for Leinster. So the next phase of this I call practice makes permanent. So the defensive line, instead of sliding slightly wider, the Leinster defence is clearly going into a pattern they have been practising under Jacques Nienaber, and the outside defenders come up much quicker than the inside with the clear goal of trying to contain the width of the attack and stop them getting past the edge and linking with Lebel out wide. So let's talk about the Toulouse attack, and it's very clear that Toulouse just want to go wide. They know they've got the extra man, and this play is all about getting the ball wide, and they're not particularly committing players in the defensive line, so it's not the best play, but they're trying to get it wide. The clues are all there. Lebel is staying wide. All the attackers are crazy deep. The forward pod passes early. Once Intermac passes the ball, he doesn't go forward and try to commit players. He goes sideways a bit. He's not a running threat either. Then we see Jack Willis, who is in this play designed to hold the defence a bit. He looks pretty knackered. He does run flat, but pretty slowly. And it's also pretty obvious he is not going to be the ball carrier. So all in all, this is a very telegraphed wide play. So now we've ended up with honours even again. 2 backs attacking Henshaw and Lama. They are Ramos and Chocobaris, and they're both fresh off the bench as well. But Ramos and Chocobaris are still very deep, and they're not really moving forward at much pace either. Intermac, he's not really a threat like we said, but Conan still accelerates pretty hard towards him, a little too desperate I think to get in contact with him, even when the action is clearly going to be out wide. So this move by Conan I think is actually really important because it puts him too high up the pitch and with too much forward momentum to turn and get back and help Henshaw and Lama when they need it the most. And then the real disaster unfolds. I've watched this again and again in 1/4 speed, but the connection, the communication in defence between Henshaw and Lama is calamitous. When the ball hits Intermac's hands, Lama is about a metre ahead of Henshaw. But as Intermac passes, maybe Lama's training kicks into place and he puts on a second burst of acceleration, desperately trying to close that outside edge to Chocobaris. But even though I said that Jack Willis's line isn't particularly convincing, and the result of Conan shooting up unnecessarily on Intermac, it means that Henshaw still has to wait just to make sure Willis isn't going to get the ball until he can join Larmour. But by that time, Larmour is now a good 4 metres ahead of Henshaw, and that's what they call being disconnected in defence. Larmour has gone and got himself completely isolated. So now the next phase, we can see Ramos and Chocobaris capitalise. Ramos looks up, and incidentally he received the ball a good 50 metres behind the gain line, moving forward fairly slowly, but instead of a connected defensive line, he just sees an isolated Jordan Larmour flying up at him. Larmour finally realises he's put himself in a really compromised situation. He really wanted to close the outside, but he's lost Henshaw and he's no idea where he is, so he doesn't actually have any cover inside. And he makes the decision that is always the worst, and that is no decision. Now, he could have carried on and got in Chocobaris' face, covered his run out wide, and at least he is out of the picture. It would mean having to leave Ramos alone, but Henshaw would have a really decent chance of making that tackle, and maybe even Conan could have got back. Who knows? And maybe Baird could have even have drifted. Or he could have made the other decision and changed his mind and cut in and gone full pace into Ramos. Maybe he'd have rushed the pass or disrupted it. Maybe if he got his pass away, Henshaw could then drift out behind Larmour and get him. Now, neither of these decisions are perfect, but at least it takes one of the attackers out of play. But instead, he gets caught in that no man's land. He slams on the anchors and hangs flat-footed between two of them, just hoping that Ramos has forgotten how to draw and give. The bad news is, he hasn't. Ramos hangs onto the pass, causing Larmour now to be in the worst possible decision. He's not facing inwards, square, or outwards, but he's turning a full 180 and showing his back to the attackers. And you can only think he's really panicking now. He thinks he's going to have to turn and tackle Ramos because he's lost all connection with Henshaw and he doesn't even know if he's still there. But he actually ends up doing a full 360 spin, and now all his momentum is completely gone. Despite this, Larmour makes a good attempt to cover back, but that absolutely kills him, that 360 spin, and it is unrecoverable. To make things worse, poor old Henshaw doesn't know what to do now. He's seen Jordan Larmour turn his back. Does he assume that he's decided to abandon his forward press and scramble back and out wide to help Keenan maybe? So in this instant, he decides he's going to stay on Ramos. And even worse, he commits to the tackle the second Ramos pulls the trigger on the pass. Now Henshaw's momentum is all forwards and he's out of the game as well. So things have gone south very quickly now. From a set position where they could have defended this fairly easily, they've let Chocobaris get on the outside channel and link with Lebel, who had hung out wide. They get into a perfect classic 2v1 situation on Hugo Keenan. The other defender who maybe could have helped out Keenan was Jack Conan, but he had committed, as we said, too high up the pitch and he couldn't get back. It looks like the only defender who has spotted this danger a bit early is Van der Fleer, but he's still got half the pitch to cover. Now Hugo Keenan has to make a decision, and to be fair to him, he does. He's flat-footed, he's got to take one of them, and he goes for Chocobaris, but as he flies in, Chocobaris is waiting, ball in two hands, moving at pace, and he gives the draw and give just at the right time to Lebel flying onto it. Keenan had to commit there, but it's desperate. Larmour's trying to get back now. He knows he's made a Horlicks of this. He dives about 2 metres away from Lebel just to show he's made an effort, but he knows it's all over, and Lebel goes in and the Champions Cup is gone for a third year in a row. So in conclusion, this micro-analysis may seem harsh, but elite sport is harsh, and I'm sure Leinster will be harsh on themselves when they finally come to review this. So I think the big questions here are, when it's 50-0, it's really tight game, Leinster are a man down and maybe another man down with Frawley there, why did they commit to a full-pace hook attack when the attack was very deep, very static? The odds of Larmour and Henshaw getting to the outside before the ball was very slim, and there's a Champions Cup on the line. They didn't need to make a low percentage defensive play when almost any other defensive play would have covered this. To be fair to Ramos and Chocobaris, the timing of their pass was excellent, but as I've illustrated, the whole wide attack was at best pretty average. So maybe one of the conclusions could be that this modern obsession with rushing in defence at all costs, at all times, is clouding teams' ability to think clearly and change your defensive pattern to suit the situation. And my point is, you can get no clearer situation than this, where a pragmatic, sensible defence would have covered this attack fine, and maybe Leinster would then gone on and won when that red card came in. And finally, often in sport, we do talk about players trying too hard. Sometimes it's hard to identify examples, but I think this is the perfect situation where Jordan Lama just tried that little bit too hard and it all went wrong. That being said, Toulouse definitely deserved to win, but I think this play epitomises where Leinster fell short once again. So I hope you enjoyed that analysis, even as a Leinster fan, and it might have been quite painful. Was this where Leinster lost that Champions Cup? Get those comments below, love to hear them, and I'll catch you next time.